Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your verses, words, and thought. From here, we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 54 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Burgio, and I'm here with co-host Phil Burgio. Phil, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and invite you to do the same. We want to start by saying thank you to all of our listeners who have made You're the Poet possible. We hope you enjoy the podcast and the poetry that is shared here. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is Luke Austin Daugherty, who is joining us from Indianapolis, Indiana. Luke, welcome to You're the Poet.
Howdy. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're glad you could join us, and we look forward to your contribution to the episode. To start things off, I'm going to turn it over to Phil to share our classic poem for the episode.
Okay, this poem is by Lewis Carroll. I'm sure you recognize the name from Alice in Wonderland, but Lewis Carroll is a pseudonym for Charles Ludwig Dodson. He was 24 years old when he started using this pseudonym. He was born in 1832 in England, passed away 1898 in England. He was a mathematician, photographer, novelist, and for this podcast, a poet. Like I said, if you hear Lewis Carroll, you think of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. One of the critics back then says his work was nonsense of the highest order. And I kind of like that. I want my poetry to be considered that someday. This poem is called The Crocodile. I was going to read the Jabberwocky because previously I butchered a poem, but Matt's fantastic editing made it all better. And I figured the Jabberwocky, how are you going to mess that up? It's already messed up. But I decided not to. This is The Crocodile, short and sweet. How doth the little crocodile improve his shiny tail and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his claws and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. Lewis Carroll.
All right, thank you. The thing that jumps out at me the most about this poem is just kind of how ironic it is, how he makes this crocodile to be this friendly little thing.
I made a few little notes at the bottom. I always like to focus on the other, the implicit or the echo. So the echo to his gently smiling jaws is the destruction of the fish. Even though it's a quirky poem, it implicitly ends in death for some innumerable amount of fish.
Yeah, I love that. Like I said, it's kind of the same just as I was mentioning that, he's making it sound all friendly, even though we all know where this is going for the fish.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for that. And yeah, the Jabberwocky would have been fun, but that's a little longer and, like you said, a little more crazy.
I try to keep those poems short because really it's all about our guest, and I don't want to go into the Rime of the Ancient Mariner or something. That was a joke, inside joke.
Yeah, I was ready to bust out the Raven for this Halloween season.
Ugh.
All right, well, from here, I'm going to share a poem for the episode. This is one of the poems I pulled out of the vault from a long time ago, I think back in my either high school or early college days. I've been helping talk some friends through some drama lately. This is a poem that I reflected upon some decisions I made that concerned a friend. I've been blessed to have great friends that I really don't have much drama with. I don't know if that's just from mistakes learned in the past or just as we grow and mature and learn to respect people better, but it's called Light from Dark. What's a lie, a fact, a secret, hidden from a friend? Is it a pain that kills when kept inside, but unleashed brings about an end? Or is it just a guilty feeling building up within, that if we hide and throw away, buries our worst sin? I contemplate this question of conscious moral thought, and regret the pain and heartache that to my friend I brought. I try to live an honest life with honor as my guide, but a dark side lies within my heart, well hidden deep inside. I feel like I've lost a trust that can be hard to gain, replacing it with evil stares and dreadful looks of pain. The past is gone, and life goes on, but I'm left with regret. If only I could travel back and history reset. So now as time has passed on by, I've learned from my mistake, and know which in the future is the better choice to make. Matthew Burgio.
Not bad for high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, high school or early college, I can't remember which.
Same thing.
Yeah. That second to the last segment where it says the past is gone and life goes on, but I'm left with regret. If I could only travel back in history reset. That jumped out in my mind some Jackson Browne lyrics from these days where he says, "Don't confront me with my failures. I've not forgotten them." kind of speaking to a friend, and how maybe the mortar of failure between the bricks of success kind of build, like you're speaking, our maturity, hopefully, and the lessons learned that make something prettier as we go.
Yeah, I like to think we learn from our mistakes and grow from them.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good analysis. I like that.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback, guys.
Yeah, sure.
All right, from here, we're going to turn it back over to Phil to share his poem for the episode.
Okay, this poem was inspired by me sitting on my back deck, watching birds, drinking coffee, and I noticed the sun was out, but the sun wasn't out. So here's my poem, Leaf Shine. Mother Nature played a trick today as I sat under clouds of gray, gazing at the forest trees, seeing patches of sunlit leaves. But where's the light? Too cloudy for sun. The clouds and earth are colored done. But then I realized the trees have patches of yellow leaves. Autumn has come to colored delight to make the gloom shine so bright. Philip Burgio.
All right, thank you. I love this. And of course, I always love autumn and the poems that have to do with the trees changing colors. We've shared some in the last few episodes. I like how you noticed that it looked like the sun coming through the trees. So very observant, and then great job bringing it to life.
I think it's interesting where, of course, it's like the transition from fall to the winter, and as these leaves are dying, but it's, I think, wild in nature how right before things die, they tend to become the most beautiful or the most vibrant version of themselves right before they cross the veil, as it were.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, neat observation there. All right, from here, we're going to turn to our guest portion of the episode. Luke, you're the poet. Show us what you've got.
Alrighty. Read you one here. As time doesn't leave anybody alone, I've always had perfect vision, close and far until the last year. And ironically, it was at a poetry reading about a year ago that I was pulling out one of my books and reading it. And I was like, why can't I lock in on this? And since then, I've actually gotten to where I about half require reading glasses in certain lighting and distance. Anyway, this is called Inspiration Is Now. And it's a lesson also learned the hard way by the things that I missed early on. Inspiration is now. It is a grand breath breathing into your spirit from the everything. Inspiration is now, like a railroad train passing by, which confronts you with the sharp choice. Either jump immediately on this adventure, riding wherever it may go, or miss the opportunity forever. Inspiration is now, like the most fleetingly alive and gorgeous rainbow you have ever witnessed, or a sunset so quickeningly beautiful that you wish it would someday replicate at the exact moment of your fading shadow, so you may be gifted with the privilege of feeling your final heartbeat paired with the golden lightning explosion of those colors in a cresting crescendo. Inspiration is now, not before, not after. It is a prowling tiger, growling, roaring, who must be taken by the tail, or be lost, missed, forsaken forever. Luke Austin Daugherty.
All right, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I like the part about the sunset because I'm partial to liking sunsets.
Mm-hmm.
I worked evening shift for so long that you miss the sunsets because you're in a dark building. And now I take the opportunity anytime to see a good sunset to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Those sunsets are kind of like the leaves where they're most beautiful right before.
Right before they fade. Right.
Yeah, before they cash their chips in.
Right. Great analogy there. I got a chuckle out of the railroad park because we were just up in northeast Ohio near the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and they have a scenic railroad there. And I was up there with my wife, and we were joking about have you ever jumped on a train and jumped off a moving train? And at the time had me pondering about that and kind of thinking about how it was sort of that analogy for life. Are you jumping on, or are you taking these exciting chances, almost like the whole carpe diem concept?
Yeah.
So I saw that here, that reminded me of my ponderings just a couple weeks ago.
I'm lucky or blessed with the opportunity because we can easily be trapped in by trains here in the city, just about 3 blocks from my house when I'm walking into Fountain Square. If the train's coming by and it's not going too fast and you don't mind, no, this makes my wife nervous and I can't tell her about it until afterwards. But you go kind of to the high side, right? Like whichever way the train's going, you go to it's coming from end, jump on the train, climb across, and then jump off on the other side before you're, all the way past kind of deal. So, but yeah, those locomotives and the inspiration, when they're passing by, you have such a brief decision window. And how many times have all of us poets thought, I will remember that later. If I don't jot it down now, it's so pregnant in my mind. There's no way I will forget this because I'm busy. I'm at work. I'm dealing with children, whatever it is. I'm in traffic. And 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, an hour later, you have the remembrance that there was inspiration, but you cannot pull the thing up.
Oh, yeah. And
Definitely.
we've even talked about that here on the podcast with other guests.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you get inspired laying in bed, getting ready to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And something comes to you and you don't want to get out of bed and find paper and pencil. Like, I'll remember it. And you never do.
Yeah.
Lately, I send myself an email on my phone and
that's exactly the same thing I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or little goofy voice notes,
Right. Something to click. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've got a notes file on my phone that is just a whole list of poetry inspirations, or sometimes it's first lines associated with a poem, and things like that. Because I find that I get my greatest inspirations at the most inconvenient times.
Yes.
Kind of like you alluded to. You're in the middle of another project, or you're in the middle of life, or you're at work and you're doing something, and something strikes you as like, oh, that would be a great poem, or there's a poetic moment there.
Yeah.
And if you don't jot it down, like you said, you remember, I was thinking about something. What was that?
Yeah. Maybe there's some kind of not to make too much of it, but some kind of an ethereal little deal that the poetry makes with you where, the cost of admission needs to be higher than complete convenience. Like it flirts with you a little bit from the other side of the quilt of whatever knits everything together. And it's like, you can either take this ticket to ride or, it's no offense. Like I'll go on to the next person or nobody. Like it doesn't need you necessarily, but it's giving you the opportunity.
I like that. Very poetic that was.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And, there's been a lot of times in my life where I've jumped on that inspiration train and been like, that project's going to have to wait because I'm having this great inspirational moment and I've just got to write this poem now.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are some of my best works, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, got another one for us.
All righty. So just to paint the picture, one of my sons died in May 2020.
Jesus.
Right at the beginning of COVID. And he was 20, one of two twin sons. And so my personal, as well as my family, it's like your personal world is wrecked. Also, the macro world is completely screwed, with COVID. So it's like these two layers of things going on simultaneously. Well, I tried to do as much normal as I could to keep myself afloat while being a husband, being a dad, business, all that kind of stuff, writer. And I prefer to write in public. So a lot of my writing takes place at Waffle House. That was when I lived in Plainfield. And then there was another diner called Oasis. Well, it was not very busy most of the time because many people were just getting stuff to go. And there was this grill cook that I met during that time. He's a little bit older than me. And unfortunately, he's not alive anymore. But his name was Roach. I actually don't know his real first name, but it was a funny story of how his nickname is Roach. Well, he and I spent a lot of time, just two of us there. And he had done a serious stint in the pokey, as they called it in the olden times, and grown a lot and learned a lot of lessons. And there's this one day that it's just he and I there. And I'm sitting up at the counter and he's got a mop. And that's where this starts. It's called We Both Walk with Ghosts. All the poems I'm reading today are from this little bootleg that I'm getting some joy from called Old Fashioned Acoustic Cassette Tape Demo that came out just a couple months ago. We both walk with ghosts. I'm sitting on a swivel stool up at the counter, sipping coffee and thinking. The only customer in this whole place as the afternoon shift change approaches. I glance at the stool to my right, and through a wormhole to an alternate reality, I see a glimpse of Nathaniel here next to me, alive and breathing with his head back, laughing wildly. An ice pick is in my chest. I look up as my grill cook buddy Roach pushes a squeegee across the tile floor in front of me. He sees my eyes. He sees the ice pick in me. I see his eyes. I see the ice pick in him. Neither of us needs to say a word when, with only a few feet between us, we both have 1,000-yard stare. We each do our best to keep on the sunny side of life, looking for silver linings to the storm clouds. We try to make others laugh while laughing a little ourselves and singing along to the jukebox. I don't know if that is because of or in spite of the fact that we both walk with ghosts. Luke Austin Daugherty. which now he's one of my ghosts. So,
Wow. Powerful poem. And thank you for that.
All I can say is, yeah, that touched me very much as far as the grief.
appreciate it.
I totally understand that.
And thank you for sharing some of the backstory on that.
You're welcome.
That definitely had to be a rough time in life there.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. So the episode's not actually out yet, but we talk a little bit about that in episode 53 with Mr. Lights, about losing a son as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
But that's got to be rough. But I really like a lot about this poem in general, outside of the grief, just the connection and some of the imagery you use, like the concept of the ice pick in your chest and the connection you had with another person at the same time, so that it wasn't just a solitary event. I like how there was somebody else there that shared that with you.
Let me tell you something about Roach, okay? The first time I met him, so I do a lot of writing out. I'll go to the same places and write, at coffee shops or whatever, diners. I'm like a vampire for human energy. You got to get in where you fit in, right? I'm not hating on how somebody else does anything, but I am not the type of writer that I've got to sit over at my sacred desk and I've got to have everything just so and all this kind of stuff. That is not me. I want to be out there hearing the noise, seeing what's going on. I want to hear the conversations. I want to lock eyes with somebody. I want to drink some coffee or a lot of coffee or some beer, whatever the deal is, right? So I probably spent, I can't say how many tens of hours around Roach at the same Waffle House, seeing him going through when it was just me and him, when it was packed house, all this kind of stuff. And I never, ever saw him a single time ever lose his patience, ever say an unkind word to an employee, a customer. Usually when you would come in, he'd yell, he'd say, "Welcome to Waffle House where all your dreams come true." And he'd say, "Love, peace, and waffle grease." And he had all these things that he'd say. And he did some writing himself and he started doing some stand-up comedy. But the first day we ever met, I was there with my other son. And bear in mind, this is a rough time. And he was trying to chat me up and he was telling some goofy jokes and stuff like that, Roach. And it was just landing wrong on me that day. Like I remember saying something to my son. I was like, this guy just getting on my damn nerves. Fast forward a span of time, he and I had become good buddies. And the day that I found out he had died, I was actually supposed to go see him that afternoon. I mean, I was about on my way to go see him that day because we hadn't seen each other in a few months because he had changed locations, right? So I had made a special day to go catch up with him while he was at work. And I just happened to pop up Facebook because we have a lot of common friends and see everybody posting about that he had died, And I lost it. I cried. And, so when we're poets, right, we have a duty to our fellow humans. Like this isn't just we're in literature class and we're trying to get A's. When we're out of school and on past all that, we're adults. Like we're in this for the real thing because hardly any of us make a dime off of any of this, whether we publish, don't publish, are on podcasts or not. We have to be waist deep in this stuff because it's a way that we express the deepest parts of the human condition. And if we are somehow chosen or cursed or whatever you want to say it, to be gifted with a knack for words and for putting things into words that some people can't, then we have a responsibility to do that to the best of our ability as often as we can do it, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth.
I like that. And yes, curse or blessing, right?
Maybe both.
Right.
I genuinely think it's both.
Oh, yeah. I think at times.
We're not going to get any money from this? Jeez.
You know what? I've been doing this professionally for over 20 years, and I haven't made a lot of money at it.
It ain't about the money.
That's why I started my own business damn near 20 years ago, so I could do this and what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I don't think many of us do it for the money for sure.
No.
Nope.
All right. Well, before we go and share the third poem, tell us a little bit about your writing journey, about how you got started writing and maybe some of your inspirations and whatnot.
So my earliest poems that I have, which I'm editing a book that's called Scribblings from the Now and Here. And it's kind of a sample across time from when I was 5. I think the first poems I have was like 5, 6, 7. I have 3 or 4 poems from when I was younger than 10. And then they pick up later because some of my early journals, I have no idea where they are, what happened to them in my late teens, things like that. But then in around 2004, I had just been sporadically writing poetry from across my teens and very early 20s. And I was a driver on a home oxygen route. And I stopped at a Goodwill and I found, it was brand new at the time, this empty journal from 2004. And there was just something that unlocked. And since then, I don't know if you can see, but all those books over there. That's about 20 years worth of journals, not including all the laptops that have broken and things are on flash drives and hundreds of typewriter poems and all that kind of thing, besides being a singer-songwriter. But where it started, my father was functionally an unpublished poem until he was, I think, in his 50s, and is one of my favorite poets who he died a long time ago. But that gene, that blessing, that curse was in me, right? And when I chase it back, even though I didn't realize it at the time, I can tell you when that thing that was in me, kind of like epigenetically, that switch flipped on and it never switched off after that. Grew up in a mobile home till I was almost 13, right? And this is, I think, a Saturday. I'm lying on this old tweed fold-out sofa that we had, and I'm watching Watership Down.
Rabbits.
Right, the rabbits. And my parents were working out in the yard. They always had nice little gardens, even though we lived in the mobile home and such. And the part where I'm trying to remember the rabbit's name that gets caught in the trap and the blood's coming out of his mouth, right? And the other rabbits kind of gather around him. Now, I didn't know this till probably decades later, because I don't think I ever watched it again after that. I thought that rabbit died, but it actually got out of the trap, so far as I recall now at this point. But I consciously remember this over 40 years later. I'm 48 now. I would have been, I'm guessing, like 6 or 7 or something. There was a conscious thought that I had when I was experiencing kind of vicariously that sorrow of what that rabbit was going through. Although it's a cartoon, but when you're 7 years old, this feels real. And I said to myself, I hope my parents don't come in. I mean, this was a conscious thought in my mind. I hope nobody comes in right now, because I want to feel what I'm feeling I want to be able to digest it without like being observed.
Yeah.
I want to be able to feel it raw without any outside thing inhibiting or critiquing or anything like that. And that conscious thought where even as a very young child, I want to feel the deep stuff, that switched it on somehow. And it's been on for over 4 decades, I suppose.
I think it's great that you remember that and you can kind of pinpoint that moment, because that's definitely a thing I think a lot of us poets feel, whether or not we can remember when it first happened or track when it happens, or are we even conscious or thinking about when it happens. But I think that's great. So tell us, do you have a book out, or you're just working on a book?
Oh, yeah. Actually, my first books, I self-published when I was 26. I self-published 3 books that year. I actually, just for the heck of it, I grabbed some out. So these actually are my second and third books. My first, I would have to dig out from a box somewhere. And one's called The Office Window Diaries. One's called Love with Vengeance. The Office Window Diaries, I need to get back out. Love with Vengeance has been republished on Amazon with a new cover and all that kind of stuff. But that year, which was the next year after that, this first journal started getting filled. I was playing music professionally as a solo artist, and then it was just like a creative floodgate opened. I was writing constantly songs, poems. Back then when Kinko's, if you remember Kinko's, was around.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I would take my Word files, I'd print off the covers on cardstock, I'd print off the guts on regular, printer paper, I'd hand staple them, trim the edges and all that kind of stuff. And I sold those at concerts and sold a bunch of those over the years. Then with the advent of more modern publishing and all that kind of stuff, I've just always stayed with my own imprints. Yeah, so there are several. I think the next book, is like my 11th book, maybe. And the old-fashioned acoustic cassette tape demo, which I'm only releasing this locally as a zine at the moment, and then it will end up on Amazon. But Love is the Middle, which is a memoir about my father and I and our relationship, Molcahete and Me, The Tao of Grief, Low Shelf Angels, Mixed Fruit Jelly and Razor Blades, maybe something I'm missing. Those are all available on Amazon and some other formats as well.
Well, we'll definitely look that up and share some links for those for you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I know we're on an audio-only podcast, but I have to admit that I love your cassette tape demo cover. The whole concept of that, how it looks like the mixtape.
I appreciate it.
Our listeners can't see that, but I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is a real cassette tape that I found on eBay, brand new, an old 80s one. And then I did the graphic stuff on it, but it started as a legit real cassette tape. And there's the poem in there. That's the title poem, but also on Spotify and YouTube and stuff and Amazon, I think 2 or 3 of my albums are on there. Everything's just my full name, Luke Austin Daugherty.
Awesome. we'll share some of those links. And if you've got any links you want to send me to share, we'll do that. But yeah, it sounds great. I'm definitely interested in reading more of your poetry.
I appreciate it. Yeah, on, I would say TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. It's just Luke Austin Daugherty. LukeAustinDaugherty.com is my old .com. I think it still exists. And stuff on YouTube. And then bloomwithoutpermission.com is my WordPress blog.
Okay. Luke, you got another one for us.
Yeah, last one. This is the last poem in this most recent book. I guess being in home healthcare in my 20s, off and on, and then just losing people in life, you realize from even a young age that, can't remember, I think it was Hitchens said something like, the party goes on, but you have to leave eventually. This one's called Alas, If Someday These Things Should Fade. This morning's bright winter glow, a home-cooked cheese omelet breakfast, and a conversation with my oldest daughter. Kisses from my wife, the strength of my 40s, and putting up a decent time on my neighborhood run. The sharpness of my mind, the unbound power of love manifest inside me. Alas, if someday these things should fade, in thought, in memories, or in actuality, due to age, circumstances unseen, or the general wear and tear of life. At the very least, I wrote them down here. So, though they may well fade, they shall never die. Luke Austin Daugherty. And I think that's some of the encouragement to us as poets is what's written stays written. So write it down. That's our main marching orders is write it down once you see it, once you feel it.
I agree. And I also think that's one of those great things about the podcast or this digital age we live in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this podcast will be out there on the interwebs forever. You know, if you're doing things like Instagram, etc.
Yeah.
And I always try to have physical copies of my poems written down. Like, you know, you talked about some of your notebooks and things being lost or hard drives crashing. I always try to have my poems like on my hard drive, printed off in a hard copy, saved in an email. So it's all out there, like multiple.
Yeah. Redundancy is the way to go.
Yes.
I have several poems that I put in a photo album when people used to have photo albums, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I can't find the photo albums right now, but I think I know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about what's your inspiration, what really started you, I'm not sure what really started me, but I think years ago when I first got married, I wrote a poem for my wife and was basically to be sung to the tune of Greensleeves, you know, back then.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't find it anymore. I kind of have an idea what I said. And it was basically about like, we thought she may be pregnant. And it was based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
It's awesome.
I can't remember anything prior to that.
I'm sort of in the same boat as you, Luke. We sort of have that in common that my father was an inspiration for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was really little, you know, Phil was writing poems, you know, whether he was entering contests at the local newspaper.
Got some free movies out of that one.
Nice.
Yeah, but that was a great inspiration for me and kind of got me interested in poetry at a young age. Then, of course, through school and stuff, you know, that developed a little bit. And then really it was my junior year of high school where it kind of just took off on my own and just kind of went off the deep end into the poetry.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, before we move on, is there anything else you want to say about poetry or anything about your journey?
Well, I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's a good work. It's important. And I know that it's encouraging to the people that you have on, and hopefully the folks that you have on are encouraging to you all. I think that, you know, we're in some strange times, and regardless, poetry is the thing that's being captured, right? On the page or on the laptop or whether it's just vocally, verbally, and it is both a responsibility in one hand and it's a privilege on the other. So to any poets who are listening to this, stick with it. Don't worry about being well known or famous and just keep plugging away because it's like chopping a tree down. If you will not stop chopping, no matter how big the tree is, it will eventually fall. Your poetry will make a difference. Sometimes when you feel like it's not, that's just a weird way of everything testing you to see if you've got the piss and vinegar to stick with it. So that's whatever 4 decades of doing this is worth.
Some wise words there. All right, well, we have a little bit of feedback for this episode. This first one is from Tara Hicks, who was on episode 52. She just wrote, "Thank you, Matt and Phil. I had such a fun time recording this episode with you." And then she had 2 notes. We talked a little about the Comic-Con on her episode, and she wanted to clarify that she wanted to go as a Bajoran.
Bajoran, right.
to
That
Comic
popped,
Con.
I was cooking the other day, and that just popped into my head.
She couldn't think of it at the time, and we said we'd update the audience in the future episode. And then she also made a note to Phil that I read your first 2 poems on grief, Phil, and listened to those episodes. And she said we shared some private feedback on those. They were well written, beautiful, and cathartic. So thank you, Tara. Then from YouTube, at Ann Connell 2931 wrote, commenting on episode 52 with Tara Hicks, lovely to hear my precious daughter reading her own poems. So thank you for that, Anne. And I didn't get any feedback to find out if this was the parent that is illustrating Tara's upcoming children's book. So
Probably is.
So we're looking forward to that. So thank you guys for your feedback. As we wrap things up, we want to let our listeners know we are grateful that you've taken the time to tune in. We hope you're enjoying the poetry shared here. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with others. If you would like to support You're the Poet and what we're doing here, there are a couple of ways to help. You can find links on our website to our Buy Me a Coffee patron site, as well as our You're the Poet store, where you can buy You're the Poet merchandise and share your love of poetry with the world. Thank you for your support as we continue to grow. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Please check out our website and various social media outlets to keep up to date with You're the Poet. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and our website, you'rethepoet.com. Until next time, Phil, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Luke, thank you for being our guest.
You're welcome. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you to you both. Goodbye.